So what has this weekend of playoffs told you about Brock Purdy's market value? I think that's been really fascinating to me is and because that's been a very big argument on social media this weekend.
It really has. I mean, when you look at the performances from, like, let's say a Justin Herbert or I don't know, Jordan Love. I mean, they both played
Russell
pretty
Wilson.
well. Wasn't Russell Wilson? He's Russell Wilson. It is what it is. But with the other two guys, it's just those are the guys that are in his same market,
Sure,
especially Jordan
young
Love.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and they both performed really terribly. Now, granted, um, Jordan Love was going against probably the best defense in the NFC, if not in the league. So they're a really good team, the Eagles. But he never looked comfortable. He never got into a rhythm. He was throwing wildly deep passes. So it goes to show you that even if you have that rocket arm, you're still, if you're not accurate and you're not throwing to a wide open receiver, it doesn't mean much. You're either going to get intercepted or you're hoping for pass interference. So when you look at their performance, right, and you compare that to Purdy and his market value, yeah, I think his market value just went up because he's played in the playoffs and he's never had a game like that. He's never had a game so far where he's thrown multiple interceptions, where he's looked like he's not in command. And even when he did look that way against the Packers last year in the second half, he played better in the fourth quarter. He led his team down the field to essentially win the game. So when it comes to his contract, I don't see
And Jordan Love also threw a game-sealing interception in that game
across his body.
Right.
Where it was like, that's what you don't. That's the cardinal rule. Like you don't throw it across your body, especially
He
when
farved it.
Yeah, well, and especially when I want to say it was like second down, and they still had timeouts. All you had to do was throw it away
Yeah.
or just slide anything, you know.
Yeah, and that was
just
a
don't turn
play
it
that
over.
Drake came up with the interception, but if he didn't, Fred Warner was going to get it. I
Yeah,
mean that was not open. Like Dre made an incredible play to take an interception away from Fred Warner. That was what his incredible play was. It wasn't just an incredible play to seal the game. It was just an incredible play to take an interception away from Fred
yeah.
Warner.
So I think when you compound all of that, right, and in the past, I've even said too, like when you compare him to like the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons, if you're paying him that much money, he does have a ceiling compared to them because he can only, there's some things that he can't do. But when we're talking about pure market value, yeah, I think that if he's going to get a contract, which he is, I agree with Johnny. It's going to be somewhere in the realm of 5 to 6 years. There's no way that they're going to sign him to a 4-year deal and then do this again in 3 years. Because after 3 years, when you get on that last year of your contract, that's when all the extension talk and all that
Really,
drama starts up.
if you sign him for 4 years, you'd have to redo it in two. I
In
mean,
two,
that's what would have to happen because you would backload that cap. And so, CJ, this is the argument that I've been having out there, and some people messaged me, and and I've said the same thing. I think I said the same thing with you, Dre, is that I think there's this viewpoint that when you look at quarterbacks like Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, and maybe even what Jaden Daniels now we're going to look at, or whoever's out there.
Right. I mean, all those guys.
That there's this idea that they're all performing at the same at playing the quarterback position, the same ability to process the field, throw accurately, read the defense, and operate an offense. So it's like that's net zero. That's just your starting point with these guys. That's how we view them. And then we say, well, Brock has the weakest physicals of all of those guys, and that is why you can't pay them the same. But that's not what's actually going on here, because if that were the case, then you would not have the success that Brock Purdy has had in this league. That I wouldn't see the things that I've seen on film of the high anticipation throwing. A lot of times what you get with big arm guys is they will throw the ball when a guy breaks open. And so this is also why we've seen that Brock Purdy's pass blocking offensive line has been ranked in the bottom third, but they have been a hugely productive passing offense from the standpoint of yards per attempt. They've been the highest in the league, right? And that points to a quarterback getting the ball out on time. So he doesn't have to see the guys open first. He's able to see it, throw it to a spot, they get there, and it's successful. Now, when that gets disrupted, there are some issues there, but a big arm guy will usually sit back and wait until that guy uncovers, because they're going to fire that ball in there like a Justin Herbert, like a Josh Allen will have a lot of times. And so their line has to hold up for another 0.1, 0.2 seconds. So, and there's pros and cons in that, but this doesn't just mean that it's a net zero and that there's things that Brock Purdy can't do that are better than those guys. Brock Purdy has played the position of quarterback at the highest levels in our league.
Yeah.
So when you say, well, he has these physical limitations, you say, well, then that's even more, that should speak to how strong the mental side of the game is for him, that he can play at the highest levels with those physical limitations. If it was a net zero of the mental side working the same between these guys, then he shouldn't even be in the same conversation. As far as, we should be sitting here saying, why did the 49ers only have 3,000 passing yards this year? That's what it should be. Yeah. It shouldn't be, how did Brock get over 3,800 yards in 15 games? He's 7th in the league in passing yards. How were there 25 other guys in the league, starting quarterbacks in the league, that had less passing yards than Brock Purdy, and Brock didn't even play a full season? Like, those are the conversations that we should have. When you look at yards per game, he's 3rd in the NFL. I mean, so when you say, okay, he doesn't have the physical attributes, okay, but that you're assuming then that he doesn't have any attributes that are superior to those other guys. And that's just not true. That isn't true. There's no metric that you can point to that would prove that that's true. So that's where I have an issue with that. And I say, because I don't care about the physicals. Steve Young did not have a big arm. He had a very, very accurate arm.
Yeah,
and
it was not big.
He had an incredible mind. But it also took Steve until he was 30 to start for the 49ers. Brock Purdy's 25. Okay. Yeah. So when we think about Steve Young in his prime, Brock is still like 6 and 7 years away from that. So from that age. So like, I don't care about the big, like, I know people love the big arm. It's so cool to see that ball fly through the air, that big, beautiful, deep pass, but I really don't care as much. I care more about, do they play the position really well? And you saw in the Houston and Chargers game that when your quarterback throws 4 interceptions, it is really hard to win a game. When you're the Packers and your quarterback cannot have a sustaining offense, it's really hard to win a playoff game. You have Josh Jacobs as your running back. You should be able, like, you can't sit here and say the 49ers had a better running game than the Packers. I don't know. The Packers had a pretty darn good running game this year. So like, I just don't see that argument there.
And not only that, but when you look at Jordan Love, right? So let's use Jordan Love as a barometer for Brock Purdy. Okay. So when you look at like his team's total defense, right? Last season in 2023, his total defense was the Packers had the 17th ranked defense. They were tied for 17th with the Titans. Okay. This year, the Packers had the number 5 defense in the league. This is courtesy of Fox Sports. Now you go over to the total offense, because he's a quarterback, right? You look at the 2023 total offense. They were ranked 11th going against the Niners, right? They had the 11th ranked offense in the league last year. This season, going into the playoffs, they had the number 5 ranked offense in the league, and they played poorly. They played even worse this season compared to last season, right? And you can argue, well, Jordan Love was hurt a lot this year. Well, I mean, Brock Purdy was hurt a lot this year as well. And the Niners had the number 4 ranked offense in the league this season. So even with the limitations, even with the players that weren't there, Brandon Ayuk, he started the season, but that wasn't the same Brandon Ayuk. And then now he's out until midseason probably. Deebo Samuel dealing with a number of injuries because when he doesn't
And
have
pneumonia,
but when he doesn't have Brandon Ayuk there, then he gets all the punishment. He gets all the big hits. He gets everything because they're trying to force feed him the ball because they're like, well, he's our playmaker.
So this is a great point I want to get here with Chad. He says we saw plays this year where guys were open for TDs and his arm prevented those plays from being TDs. You saw the same thing from the big arm QBs yesterday, but you didn't care. You don't remember them because it wasn't your team. We saw guys miss wide open players down that were 3 and 4 yards behind the defense. Justin Herbert did it. Jordan Love did it. Jalen Hurts did it. All these guys missed plays because they didn't get the ball in and exactly where they wanted it to be down the field. You don't remember those because it wasn't your team. You are hyper focusing on Brock Purdy.
But it's also a case too, Johnny. It's also a case where they go, he missed him, but he could have hit him. He could have made that pass.
And then we put it on X all week. We put it on X all week of Brock missing it, right? Or Brock.
But if Brock misses that pass, then they go, he missed that. He underthrew that. He probably couldn't hit that pass anyway.
Right.
While the other player, he could have hit it. Maybe somebody hit his arm.
I remember Justin Herbert overthrowing his receiver by 8 yards.
I remember Jimmy Garoppolo doing that too in the Super Bowl.
Right,
remember that?
Right. We remember Jimmy now. Okay, that's a different conversation.
Damn it!
We see every quarterback miss these throws. Like it's about hit rate. And when you look at Brock Purdy's hit rate on deep throws, it's better than any quarterback in the league. So this argument that his arm is preventing those plays from happening, that is simply a hyper focusing on only our team and remembering only what our guy does. And we don't watch the other teams through the same lens. So people will say I'm biased. And I say, no, that is the biased take. When you look at it and say Brock Purdy, another example. Okay. The deep pass against the Lions to Ricky Pearsall down the right sideline. That play got criticized so much because it was, if he threw it another yard and a half further, that's a touchdown to Ricky Pearsall. And I go, okay, we also watched 5 quarterbacks not even complete that pass that everybody says have more arm talent than Brock Purdy that missed that same throw. I watched the guy throw an interception throwing that same exact pass yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I don't like that is when we're focusing more on Brock Purdy than what actually is going on. That's the issue I have, is that it's only looking at the highlight reels of everybody else and is not, because we don't feel the pain of the misses. We feel the wows of the hits, but we don't feel the pain of the misses. And with our own guys, we tend to feel the pain of the misses, and we feel only relief that we didn't miss when it's completed. Right.
Right. It's a good one-liner.
I think a good comparison is if you watch the film Top Gun Maverick. You know, what do they say before they go into that last dogfight? It's not the plane, it's the pilot. So you might have a badass jet that's got all kinds of capabilities and all that, but if the pilot isn't elite,
it's about the man in the box.
It's what it is. And so, yes, I think that mentally, his processing ability, his decision making, his ability to play the quarterback position is at such a high level compared to a lot of other quarterbacks in the league. Now, I think this year was more of a struggle because, I mean, look, he had guys coming in and out of the lineup. He had games where he had receivers that he hadn't even probably done those routes to. And so
there was so many, I saw so many things on film of just like him and his receivers were not on the same page.
Well, and you even said too on my show, you were like, yeah, they only have 2 hours every week to work in their plays. So, and I think that's something that people need to understand, because if you have 2 hours every week to actually physically work in those plays and your players are not there, how much of a detriment is it to the team when a guy is hurt? He can study the plays and be there when they're talking about it, but he can't perform them in that 2 hour gap.
There's no muscle memory.
There's no muscle memory. So now you're asking a player as good as he is, whoever it is, to perform these plays without actually physically running the plays. I mean, that's really hard to do.